4, where we left off last time. So we got a couple places we want to look at today. We want to look at chapter 4, but we also want to keep our finger for a few minutes in James chapter 1. You remember the old hymn, How Firm a Foundation? How firm a foundation, ye saints of the Lord, right? Okay. There's that verse that talks about fiery trials. All right. Well, Peter addresses those kinds of circumstances here in verse 12. He says, Beloved, so of course he's talking about believers now, right? Beloved, those who are part of the family, do not be surprised at the fiery trials when it comes upon you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. Don't be surprised, but rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when His glory is revealed. Peter's not the only one who writes about trials. James, chapter 1, James says the same thing. Verse 2, Consider it all joy, my brethren. So we're talking about the same group here, believers. Consider it all to be joy when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So there's a whole lot that is being said with respect to trials here. First of all, he reminds us that it's commonplace for us as Christians to encounter trials. It's commonplace. Don't ever let anybody tell you, and don't you dare tell anybody else, that when you become a Christian, trials are over. Right? Oh my goodness. You can just trust Jesus and fly away and everything is going to be great. No. James says when you encounter trials, not if, when. Because it's just a matter of time, isn't it? If we are experiencing trials, we are the rule. We are not the exception. It's supposed to be that way. If you've just gotten through a trial, good for you. Catch your breath and get ready for the next one. Right? It's kind of like riding on a roller coaster. You know, you take that one twist and that one dip, and then you start going click, 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 click. You know, that's your break, because there's another one that's coming. There's another drop that's up ahead. Except roller coasters are a little more fun. So yes, going through a trial It is something that pulls us together. We've got that in common. Secondly, trials come in various categories, right? Physical trials, emotional trials, financial trials, relational, spiritual. They can slip in unexpectedly. They can knock us off our feet. Whether it's at the business, whether it's at the church, whether it's in the family, at home, they arrive unannounced. They can come suddenly like a car accident. They can be prolonged like a drawn-out court case. It can be a nagging illness. Trials can be public. Trials can be private. Trials can be directly related to our own sin or the sins of others, or not related to any sin at all. Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? A trial is like a rock that's hitting the water. You don't cause the jolt, but you're certainly impacted by it. You know, you're just standing there, and then suddenly that smooth lake of your life surges into a giant ripple. These things happen. That's what he's getting at. It's going to happen. Thirdly, trials put our faith to the test. They do. It doesn't matter what the source is, doesn't matter what the intensity level is. There's something about suffering that simplifies life, doesn't it? How is that so? It clearly focuses in on perspective. I mean, it's a major change to what our focus has been. Forces us to lean on Him. Definitely provides different opportunities that may not have been there before. You meant it for evil, God meant it for good, Joseph said, right? Okay. Has a way of just drawing us back to the basics. Puts our faith to the test. Stretches our confidence in God. Forces us back to the bedrock of our faith. And serves as a refining process. Fourth, without trials, we don't grow. Again, I like to use the example of a tree. Trees grow because of storms. The storms come, the wind whips it back and forth, strengthens all those fibers, forces the roots to go deeper. Trials are like that. Without trials, there could not be maturity. Yep. Mm-hmm. 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 Sure it is. I mean, especially when you watch them push the things over. I mean, it's amazing. It's like, really, that's all there is to that tree? Wow. Yeah. Very true. James calls this perfect and complete. That which is perfect and complete. Right? Not lacking anything. He says it is the perfect result. What causes the perfect result? What is it that causes that perfect result? Perseverance, endurance. Yeah. Endure the trial. Endure the trial. Let it come to completion. And when it does, we will be a better person for it. Some trials are slight and easily forgotten. There are others that hang and weigh heavy upon us, don't they? They can leave us exhausted, overwhelmed, make us feel benched on the sidelines. I think that is the type of trial that Peter is referring to. We're back in Peter now. And Peter is talking about a fiery ordeal. Do you see it in the text? First of all, it's an ordeal. An ordeal isn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing that, oh, wow, that was tough, and it's over with. It's an ordeal, means that you have to deal with it. You put up with it. It's not something that is slight, necessarily. Perhaps even something from which we cannot find relief very easily. These are the type of things his readers are dealing with. Now, of course, we know their ordeals were pretty maxed out, weren't they? You had people that were being persecuted, and in some cases, in many cases, giving their lives for their faith. So, we're not necessarily at that point yet. But there are days where it makes you wonder how far away it is, right? What do we do when the rug is pulled out from under us? Our first response typically is that we panic. We panic. Everything that we know to be true about the Lord, we forget instantaneously, and we panic. We doubt God's love. We wonder if He's going to be able to get us through the hard times. So that certainly is difficult. Very eager to please, but the type of guy who opens mouth and inserts foot. And yet, we're told that after he denied the Lord, and Jesus looked at him, he went out and he wept bitterly, and then the Lord restored him after he rose from the dead. How that Peter was changed. Even in the midst of that failure, during those trials, he effectively became a very powerful person for the Lord. Whereas before he was vacillating, he was impulsive, overly zealous. He's broken and he's changed, and he emerges as a person who is matured and seasoned in their faith. And these terms that Peter is listing here are not theoretical terms tossed around by an old fisherman. No, these are words that are shaped in the blast furnace of his own afflictions and his own pain. Do not be surprised at the fiery trials that are to try you as though it was some strange thing. Oh my, No, shouldn't be seen as being strange. He tells us how to react from these trials. And that's the first thing. Don't be surprised. Life is like a schoolroom, isn't it? When you go to school, every once in a while there's a pop quiz. Or at least there used to be. There are tests that you take. Sometimes you have to study for those tests, unless the teachers give you all the answers and give you everything on the test. It makes it easier to grade that way. Right, Jerry? Our Christian maturity is measured by our ability to withstand the tests that come our way. Are those the kinds of things that are going to shake our foundation or strengthen our foundation? Are they going to throw us into an emotional tailspin? Or are we going to be able to recorrect and come out of that and keep going as a result? So he's saying to us, do not be surprised when the test comes. You don't know necessarily that you need to learn certain things. You may think that you have already learned certain things, but God is the one ultimately who knows, and He determines whether or not we need maybe some remedial help in a certain area. God is the one who is molding us into the image of His Son, and that requires trials. So first and foremost, don't be surprised. Secondly, he says, keep on rejoicing. That's the hard part. That's the part that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Keep on rejoicing. And a lot of us say, are you kidding me right now? Ken and Emma, keep on rejoicing. Really? You try living for a whole summer in a trailer with him, with her. And, at our age, picking up the pieces of this, that, and the other thing, literally. And we're supposed to rejoice? Keep on rejoicing? We're talking trials, right? We're talking fiery ordeals, right? No pun intended. No. God is telling us. We're not saying that. God is telling us. Keep rejoicing. To the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing. James again said, consider it all joy. Why? Because it's the trials that allow us to enter into a more intimate relationship with the Lord. That's what draws us close. And if we endure those trials faithfully, we will receive a future reward. And if nothing else, maybe our trials will allow us to get a little bit of a glimpse, just a little bit of a glimpse of the magnitude of the suffering that Jesus went through for us. So trials become a means to a greater end. Gives us a deeper relationship with the Lord and a richer reward in heaven, not necessarily on the earth. We would never know such fellowship with the Lord or even with one another if we didn't endure testing every so often. It drives us close, doesn't it? Think about a family, generally speaking. Generally speaking. You know, when a family goes through a trial, goes through a difficulty, you know, I mean, everybody, you know, begins to put aside all of their pettiness, and the seriousness of the moment comes to the surface, and at least for a while, everybody draws together. Same thing is true in the family of God. God uses those things to draw us close to Himself and close to one another. How have you seen that aspect of trials prove itself true in your own life? Mm-hmm. That's how you came to know Jesus. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think maybe that's the number one way that a lot of people come to the Lord, is that they finally come to the end of themselves. Yeah. In case it's hard for us to think that trials can bring about rejoicing, let me take you to the book of Acts, chapter 5. Go ahead and turn there. Acts 5. A very classic example where we find the apostles have just been beaten and ordered to stop preaching about Jesus. Now, pause for a moment and picture that bloody, brutal scene. We're not talking about some old nun who'd come along and slap you across the knuckles with a ruler. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who's beaten with rods. You know, we're talking at least half-inch, if not inch, dowel-like rods. That could leave quite a welt. Look at what they did while they were still bleeding from the beating in verses 41 and 42 of Acts chapter 5. So they went on their way from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they had been considered worthy to suffer shame for His name. And every day in the temple, from house to house, they kept right on teaching and preaching Jesus as the Christ. Now, these are people who were just like us. These were not super saints. These were ordinary, everyday folks. The only difference is that they refused to let their fiery ordeal steal their joy or take the focus off their objective. So as we think about the trials that we face, and let's be honest, I mean, we're not necessarily going to everybody fess up here this morning, but if we're honest with ourselves, we all are dealing with some kind of a trial. Something. An attitude of joyful gratitude lets us learn the lessons that we would not otherwise learn. Lord, I really don't like what's happening right now. It's breaking my heart, what's going on right now. But I would be foolish if I were to say that you were not in it. I don't understand why you have allowed this, but for some reason you have. And because of that, help me to see what you want me to learn from this. Help me to be able to endure. I know that you promise you'll give me what I need when I need it. Help me to believe in that. And when it's all said and done, I look forward to being able to look back down the road from where I've been and to give you that much more praise and glory for where I've come. John Newton said, "Grace has led me near thus far, and grace will lead me home," right? It is sufficient. We're going to stop there. We'll finish the rest of it next week. Father, thank you again for your teaching. Thank you for Peter. We look forward to meeting him one day and being able to thank him firsthand. Keep us focused in spite of the alarm that we may be experiencing. Give us the grace to trust you more. In Jesus' name, amen.